All right, here we are. Welcome back to Bookwave, back for another Wavecast. This is number 11. Today we're joined by Will and Pat as usual, and we got back Synapsian from
What's up?
from the olden days of the podcast. Returning guest star, we're bringing them all back. So, what's on your mind, lads? What do you want to talk about? Let's start with you, Synapsian, the guest of honor.
Well, the coronavirus is on my mind for sure. We've been stuck at home for like 2 months, and then our governor released us like wild hogs back into the world. And as expected, the cases are starting to go back up again. So that's kind of disheartening. But a lot of stuff has been going on because it's been quite a while since I've joined one of these book waves. I've read a couple books myself, moved out to the country, living out by the lake, Canyon Lake here in Texas. Still married.
Right on.
Good.
Let's see. I got one of my dogs had passed away. I think I mentioned that to you guys once. And then my other dog, now she's the only pet. She enjoys that, but we think she has leukemia. So just, dealing with that kind of stuff. Busy with work now that they've released us again. Actually, this week I was, I don't know if I mentioned, I'm in the nuclear safety industry, so I go do inspection at places who use nuclear material, and that's what I was doing this week. Did like 9 inspections. Pretty busy week.
Wow, that sounds interesting at the very least.
Yeah, right now the morale seems to be pretty low. Like every place I went to had violations, which I can't really go into, but say it didn't seem like they were doing too good. I think because all this other stuff is going on in the world, so maybe they're distracted and not able to think about all the small details. Just not practicing good habits and stuff.
Yeah, and that can be hard, especially like just in general, but in the midst of this pandemic, trying to figure out how to improve yourself while also trying to survive, it doesn't really mesh very well. And it's like how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're already in a situation of crisis, you're not going to be looking at your small details. And I think that, like, because it's weird, there's like this dichotomy where when things are good, you should be able to change, but because it's comfortable, you don't want to change. And then when things are bad, you should have to change, but because things are bad, it just, in many cases, dredges up even worse stuff. And it's like, so what is the perfect environment to promote elevation of human consciousness, to meditate and look inward and assess how you're doing everything? Because it's clearly not a pandemic. That is not what is going to drive millions of people to meditation and reduce their triggers and resolve PTSD. I don't think we've seen that in these past 3 months.
Well, I would argue that that's kind of a good thing. I guess there's two sides to it, but the benefits of just staying at home and learning how to meditate during these tough times is a good way to be able to take a look at yourself on the inside and learning to build confidence in solitude. I think that solitude can open up a lot of, I guess, a lot of pathways, for lack of a better word, because when you have so much external noise in the world, mainstream media, social media, all these different laws in regards to the pandemic, and as well as people who are choosing to ignore, safety laws, not wearing a mask and everything like that, just going about their day, live and let live, die young and all that jazz. It's a good way of just taking some time to learn about where you are now and asking yourself if you want to change. Like, for example, I'm actually this weekend I am planning on just getting off of all the all the electronics of this, um, avoiding mainstream media and all that, even reading books, and not doing anything, and just being able to spend an entire weekend alone and just my thoughts and write them all down, because I think that's a healthy habit one can learn. Now, of course, in this day and age, people are prone to 7 seconds of attention, but taking the time to actually just listen to yourself is a great way to build a healthy form of confidence.
Yeah, that those words kind of remind me of what Timothy Leary said about turning on the circuits inside yourself and tuning into the divine aspects of your soul or spirit, and dropping out of all of those distractions like electronics or Reddit or Instagram, whatever. There's like, it seems like there's an infinite number of distractions these days, and someone could easily spend every waking moment glued to the changing environment, because it's, everything, there's so many variables right now that are constantly changing, the number of people that are getting sick. And I think, Pat, last time, the last wave cast number 9, you were talking about like what would it take to unite all of humanity, like what existential or otherworldly threat would it take to unite everybody on the earth. And this virus kind of fits into that. It's not necessarily otherworldly, but it's definitely on a size scale, like orders of magnitude smaller than most things we interact with. So it's, you can't see it, so maybe you could consider it otherworldly or kind of an alien thing, even though it came from our planet.
Wasn't it Ronald Reagan that said how quickly the world would unite if faced with an alien invasion or something like that? Some kind of alien threat?
Yeah, and I think we did unite for a while. It seemed like the world was agreeing to flatten the curve, that saying that we've all heard. But then after 2 months of that, people were starting to say, well, screw the curve, we need money. And I think you can't really expect, like, I think I was deluded to think, well, just because there's everybody has more time on their hands, they'll meditate. But if you're filled with the 3 poisons from Buddhism, desire or greed, hatred, anger, and ignorant, it makes sitting down to meditate and reflect on yourself, to tune in and turn on, it makes that really difficult, because you want to get up and go get something. You want to get up and respond to that tweet, respond to the president's tweet or something, and change the world through a couple characters. So it makes it really hard to just sit still and look inside if you got those 3 poisons.
Yeah, especially when it comes to the idea of work hustle. Like, I don't know if you've seen videos on YouTube about people just putting out topics about how to get so much done in less time, which is understandable if one were to think about it. But just the idea that you have to work all day, get so much done to get ahead of everybody else, that also can be overwhelming.
Yeah, I think it's important to find the middle ground there. Like, I'm just thinking about how it's so easy for us to say, hey, you got all this time, why don't you start to learn how to meditate? But I remember the first time I tried to meditate, and, my brain was a complete mess. So I'm just trying to think what it would be like to try to meditate for the very first time with my mind being a mess, and also being completely panicked about the pandemic and everything. Might not be a good combination.
For sure. Sitting in silence or even sitting in front of a mirror and meditating is like an advanced practice, from my understanding. And for beginners, guided meditation is really helpful, where you're listening to somebody guide you through the steps of relaxation. Like I often go to Audio Dharma or the Buddhist Society of Western Australia. They have really good guided meditation. And they're on YouTube, or Audio Dharma's got their own website.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out, a plug to them.
Yeah, I really like the guided meditations. I use I don't even know what the app is called. Mindfulness Insight Timer.
Okay.
And it's so anybody can get on there as a creator and put up their own guided meditations. So it's sort of a free market. Like you don't have to pay for anything. And
Oh, wow.
what happens is you have creators that know what they're doing and do it well and do a lot of it, and you get some pretty good variety from them. But I find that for what I'm specifically looking for, it's hard to get maybe the chunk of time that I want, because you've got people who have niched themselves into this corner market where I don't want that. Like maybe I want 15 minutes or an hour, but I've got 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, and then an hour, but it's an hour about relationship guided meditation. And it's like, okay, so we've got a lot of people making a lot of content that's addressing certain people, but not sort of the baseline meditations that I'd be looking for, where it's just take a minute and do a guided relaxation, or take a longer minute and do a guided relaxation. And so that's an issue. So I'm gonna have to check out what you're referencing.
For sure. I mean, even if you only have 2 minutes, you could do a simple meditation, placing one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, and tuning into your breath.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be, even if you have 2 minutes, it can be pretty profound. Just remembering you're this breathing entity, and the breath gives you life, kind of a Stoic tradition.
Yeah, and just watch the body and watch what the breath does to the body and how the body reacts to the breath and how it's all linked together.
I think that's a really lofty task, even like when we're talking about how easy it is to start meditating. Like the concept of being in touch with your breath and your body, and realizing like, okay, this is the breath of life, and to value that and not take it for granted is something hard to do. It requires a slowness of thought that is hard to get to, especially when you throw into the mix cell phone addiction and social media addiction. When you're looking for a 7-second dopamine hit, putting your hand on your chest when you're high in anxiety because you're freaking out about the newest missile launch that Trump's done, or the newest bigoted thing that's come out of 17 different states. It's hard to say, oh, this is going to help. Like, that's not where we tend to go.
Yeah, but I think it's important to, like, mention these kinds of things, because, like, when a lot of people think of the word meditation, they're all going to think of something different. Like, it's going to be some people, oh, you meditate, so you just sit on the ground and, you know, think about nothing for half an hour. I'm like, well, not really. It's more complex than that. And
yeah, for sure.
Like, you can get into like other breathing exercises too, like Wim Hof and the 4-5-7 technique and all kinds of stuff. So those are all really good forms of meditation. I personally don't do the guided meditations that often. I really prefer to just clear my mind and watch my own thoughts and try to clear them all away.
I think a lot of people, when they assume you're meditating and have zero thoughts in your mind, and they try to do it and realize that thoughts are, constantly passing through their mind like a cloud. I think they assume they're doing it wrong because they're having
exactly
thoughts, but you're gonna have thoughts. You just don't get attached and you let them dissipate.
Yeah, and then like when you notice like, oh crap, I got distracted by this thought, I've done it wrong. It's like, no. That awareness is the right thing. Now you can return to center. And that's the point, is not to not get attached to the thoughts. It's to notice the attachment to the thoughts and then let them go.
Yeah, as soon as you've noticed it, it's working. That allows you to go back to your center, back to your breath, and then you'll get better at it. It's like when you start lifting weights. You can't do like 15 reps of 100 pounds right away. Got to work up to it.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely a muscle that's being built, but it's a familiarity and a relationship that's being developed as well. I think for me, getting into meditation, like doing years of yoga in advance, was very helpful, because when you do yoga, even if you're distracted by all of your thoughts, if you can get through a sequence of exercises at a subconscious level, you've taken time out from your day to nurture your body, and that helps erode those sort of hang-ups and those complexes that they talk about in yoga that are in your mind, so that when you do finally go to meditate, you've already started a relationship with your brain, and your brain's comfortable again talking to you about this crap that's the best word for it. And you don't get that sort of trigger anymore, because it's now, okay, this is a relaxed individual who's going to respect me, and we can hang out here. But like when you first start to meditate, and especially if you've got like anxieties and depression and things like that, or anger, lots of anger,
Yeah.
you go into the depression and you see these thoughts, and you run away because you're not ready to face it. And I think that's why I push the yoga a lot, is because it's impossible to not feel better after you do a sequence of yoga.
Yeah, and I probably wouldn't have got into yoga if I didn't have like a back and shoulder injury. Then I pretty much cured myself with it, so changed my life. There's no reason to stop now. And I see all these people that are not flexible at all, can't even put their arms above their head like that without hurting themselves. I'm just like, I can't allow myself to become that. Like, I need this. This is an upkeep. This isn't just something that people do to make themselves feel better. It's something that I need to do to keep myself on the level, kind of thing.
Have you ever seen like a really old guy that has such a punch in their back? They look like Quasimodo or something.
Oh yeah.
Like just because of bad posture their whole life. And yoga is all about, keeping the spine straight. And so just sitting,
Yeah.
with a straight spine can help you from looking like a hunchback.
That's another form of meditation right there. When you start to notice that you're slouching over, and then stand up straight with your shoulders back. What am I doing here? Like, you start to notice that more. That's a sign that you're getting better at mindfulness.
And then you feel better after you sit up straight, because a lot of times maybe you're in a funk or you're feeling depressed, and so your body is going to reflect those feelings, and so you'll notice you're slouching or not sitting straight, and then you just sit up straight. And even if you have to do a push-up where you push your face into a smile, if you're sitting straight, you're going to feel like 10 times better than you were.
Oh yeah.
Try to do like 10 push-ups in the morning.
Oh, for sure. Morning workouts are the best.
Yeah, but like that's why I got into yoga too, right? Because I was like, why is my back sore, and what can I do to help it? Because the pain clinics didn't have answers, and so I got into yoga, and the answers started to become really weird. Like, maybe my back's sore because I'm angry, maybe my back's sore because I'm stressed, maybe my back's sore because I'm not doing the right things in the part of my life that has to do with spirituality. And then I went from yoga to meditation to hypnosis to diving deep into the brain and trying to figure out, okay, where did I learn how to react? And is that how I want to continue to react? Or can I teach myself a new behavior? And like, I would not have guessed 4 years ago when I jumped off that bridge into the water and injured my back that this is where it would have landed me, but I am very thankful for it.
Well, it got us into a book club. There we go.
There's a really good psychologist who does some YouTube videos. His name's Gabor Mate. He talks about that. Like, why is it that react the way we react. And I found that to be really interesting. And speaking of yoga, I've actually started this project working with my neighbor who's part of like this junior league. And so I'll guide them through a yoga class on Zoom. And it all kind of catalyzed because everybody was home using Zoom. And she asked me if I could do a yoga class over Zoom. And I at first thought, well, I don't know if that's really possible, but we made it work. Got a tripod and set it up and do like a 15-minute yoga class over the internet.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
Speaking of, we were talking about the world uniting before we started talking about meditation and yoga, and what it would take, what existential threat would it take to unite the world. And I mentioned that I thought the world united over this coronavirus thing. But the other thing I've noticed is after it went on for a while, after everybody kind of got fatigued from flattening the curve, you know, at the executive leadership level, at least in the US, it's kind of fallen apart. You know, I don't know what to make of that. It's kind of, it is a bit scary.
Yeah, it worked for a little bit, and then it just seemed to make things worse afterwards.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, you know, we see people uniting over this Black Lives Matter stuff up in Seattle, and they've created their own like zone, I guess. I don't know if
the
you call it the
Chaz.
Chaz or the Chop.
I think they've,
But, you know,
haven't they taken it down now? Is it still a thing?
They're about to,
Okay.
slowly but surely.
All
I
right.
don't
I
even
was
know
pretty-
anything about that.
they were calling
Consider
it the
yourself lucky
Summer
then,
of
Will.
Love. They were calling it the Summer of Love, and you know, I'm curious how it's going to end, because like the Summer of Love in '67 just kind of petered out in October of that year, peacefully ended. I don't know if this one's going to end as peacefully, you know.
Well, it's
like
already
there's a
not
lot of
peaceful as
people.
far as I've seen.
Yeah, there's a lot of angry people out there, and they seem like they want you to be angry over their, you know, the injustices that they're protesting.
I don't even know what they're protesting. The United States?
So they're protesting against police injustice and police brutality. That's why the president said something about like outlawing chokeholds, which I don't really agree with. They're really upset about, like, you know, if a black man dies by a police officer, that like really gets the hornets riled up. Like that George Floyd guy, you know, he got murdered by a knee bar to the neck, which I think the knee bar to the neck it's an effective move, but for 8.5 minutes, I don't know. It's kind of whack.
This also wasn't a jiu-jitsu match with a referee. This was a fully armed officer and a, you know, whatever. He should have known better. That was not a chokehold. Trying to ban chokeholds in response to that is like, I don't even know. Trying to ban beef after too many people get sick from McDonald's.
Well, it's like protesting rape.
Yeah. Nobody likes rape. Nobody likes racism. You're not, like, really accomplishing anything by saying this was wrong when all anybody can say was, of course, we agree with you.
And, like, I'm certain that, you know, the social justice warriors that don't follow us would jump down my throat and yell at me and call me ignorant and short-sighted and part of the problem and white privileged and, you know, propping up a patriarchal oppression system that
hey, what good is free
perpetuates...
speech? What good is free speech if we don't use it, right, Will?
Exactly. But the thing is, I've been asking myself why. I think since I was 4 years old, and I think in the past week or two, I've started to realize why I've been asking myself why. And I'll explain that a bit more. So, philosophy, I think we've all established in this room, is really good. And I think the answer to why people should study philosophy is because when you don't have a leader who has studied the philosophy of the movement, what you have is a movement that doesn't know where it's going. And it can get incredibly treacherous when you have a movement that is primarily being, the momentum behind it is from mob rule. And it's ignorant, short-sighted, and fueled by rage. And the fact that there's no member of any community standing up and putting that burden on their shoulders and saying, I will lead this movement. I will tell you what our credo is. I will tell you what our philosophy is. I will tell you what our end game is. Like, I saw this quote from AOC, whatever.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
And the quote, so from what I understand, this is an individual who is a politician.
Yep.
I think, right? So politicians should theoretically have an education and be able to make political suggestions and advice. But instead of doing that, she offered a quote that said, if you were really upset about oppression and racism, you'd be pushing for protocols that did something to deal with it.
Well, since you don't know her origin, she wasn't a politician until she got elected. Her last job was a bartender. So she's like a champion of the people type of personality.
Right. So that's a prole as far as I'm concerned. If you're going to make a statement as a politician that doesn't offer a suggestion of course of action, and you're just going to tell the masses to fight for something, they'll follow you. You're a politician. You put yourself in a position of authority, and they trust you and they respect you. And certainly one demographic does. And now they're in the streets and they're pissed off and they don't know what they're fighting for. They don't know what it will look like. They don't know how it will impact situations. They've never studied the history of societies that have battled the same issues and tried to use the same resolutions and failed miserably. And it's like, that's why you need philosophy, because good intentions line the road to hell. And if you don't actually think through what you're doing, you're going to find yourself in the middle of a civil war, and you're going to realize very quickly that that's probably not what you were after.
That's the thing. They don't know what they want.
No, because they're not thinking and they're not aware. They aren't even individuals at this point.
I think I have a kind of a theory about this. Why they are so upset and destroying everything in the streets. I think from a young age, they did not get attention from their parents. And in the age of electronics, their parents gave them an iPad or an iPhone or something, and they just spent their time looking at this screen and, making make-believe in these fictional worlds, and not getting enough care from the mother and father. Not as role models, not as caretakers, not as teachers of the world. And as they grow up, and by the way, some of these people in Chaz, they're like under 20 or so, I would say. In their late teens and early 20s. And as they grow up, they're going to use their own make-believes from these electronic devices and all these stories that they got. And also because they did not learn from their parents. And they're going to incorporate it into the real world. As well as whatever ideology that's going to be spilled at them, they're just going to accept it. And that's how they get so angry and they don't know what they want. I think that's the case, is because they had a lack of caretaking from the parents.
I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I can't agree with you because I was just as pissed off, and my mother is the greatest woman in the world, and I didn't go down that road, and I could have. And I remember being a liberal for 5 minutes, and then I met Justin Trudeau, and it was over. But that didn't happen for these kids. And I think I also got pissed off at technology and, I did a lot more binging on 4chan and stuff than they did. You know, I put in work on the internet, and I got into the dark web, and I saw what it was doing. And for the past 30 years, we've been feeding people this message that says if you have a big enough emotion, people will listen and you will be important. And it's not about having a good message. It's not about having a good intention. It's just about getting noticed. And like, I don't know if you guys saw, Jenna Marbles just took down her YouTube channel because she's like calling herself into check because she has blackface videos and stuff. And she was contributing to this environment where you don't even know what you're doing. And we got technology that allowed us to do it very quickly without checking it. And that fueled and created an entire generation of social justice warriors. Hi, mom or wife.
Hey, Taco.
Yeah, I think you're onto something, but the doggo is pretty distracting.
All dogs.
But like, I think technology's been training a generation to get triggered.
Yeah.
I think it's been doing it intentionally. I think it's been doing it to turn people into consumers that graze on news feeds and shit on news feeds and then buy stuff on Amazon.
I think
And I don't think it's enough.
As well as this idea of fame. And if you look at the number of content creators on YouTube with millions and millions of subscribers, most of the time there are videos from smaller channels talking about some of the stuff that they're going through, mostly drama stuff. And I think that fame also fits into this subject too, where they think that they can take the easy route by saying they can create whatever they want, go after it, they're special and all that, and just reach for the top because that's what everybody else is doing. It's a big trend.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing now is that it's not enough, and that's why we have like the audience going out into the streets and looting and pillaging and protesting. And that's not all of them, don't get me wrong, but guess what? If you're a part of a movement that has any arm that is doing it, you're part of the problem, because anger doesn't resolve things. That you do not get to a good place when you start with anger. And I understand the notion of needing to be pissed off, but every single Hollywood movie has been telling us to fuel your passion with your anger. Channel the energy.
Use the dark side of the
Do
force.
not explode into the dark side of the force. Channel your energy to do good. And that's not what's happening. There's no processing of the emotion. It's just puking into the streets. And that's ugly and terrifying.
Yeah, I think the biggest part of it is just our relationship with this technology, not the technology itself. 'Cause
100%.
yeah, but that just like oddly reminded me of one single part of a book that I read last year called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, and he mentions this instance about how wheat and agriculture is what domesticated humans. Because when we look at, what domesticated the dog, scientifically speaking, there's not much difference between a dog and a wolf. But when we look at a dog and a wolf, clearly that's two different things. Same with like a bull and a cow. And a human now after agriculture and what we were before are completely two different things. So I think we're going through the same kind of transformation with social media, because it just kind of popped up. We didn't know how to utilize it properly or what utilizing it properly would accomplish for us. And it kind of trapped us into this lane that we had to follow to allow ourselves to continue on this path. It cut off a lot of other routes for us. Like now we can't go back. Now that we have this whole system with grocery stores and agriculture and farming, there's not an easy route back to the, Paleolithic diet kind of thing. And it's the same thing for our psyche with social media and newer technology.
to jump off that idea, Scott, one of the books I had read was by Noah Yuval Harari, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century.
Oh yeah.
And it talks a lot about like artificial intelligence, social connection, how to ultimately navigate that in a way that doesn't harm individuals and society.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple other books I had read. I didn't know if you guys wanted to
Sure. What have you been reading?
discuss. So I read that 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. I read Kindness and Wonder by Gavin Edwards, which is kind of a documentary of Mr. Rogers. I read The Secret Wisdom of Nature by Peter Wohlleben. And I finished The Harder They Come by T.C. Boyle, fiction. Big fan of T.C. Boyle. He really describes people in a realistic way. And the one I'm working on right now is War by Sebastian Junger, which I think one of the first books we ever read was Sebastian Junger's Tribe.
Yeah.
If you guys recall that? Way back in the day.
Yeah, we didn't even record that one. We just read it and hung out.
That was before my time.
Yep.
So what have you guys been reading?
Well, this crazy thing right here, Beyond Good and Evil by
Just,
Friedrich Nietzsche.
the densest stuff we can get our hands on.
Yeah.
The Bible and Beyond Good and Evil. Just a match made in heaven.
Oh, yeah.
I have my Bible right here.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
It's that thing.
I
This is
just got
actually
a little guy.
Yeah. That and Beyond Good and Evil. I've been reading that. Actually, I've just been reading writing manuals lately, just to freshen up my writing, because I've been doing that a lot. And I'm curious to read more of Haruki Murakami. I actually got a Kindle book deal from BookBub, where one of his books was like $2, and it's called 1Q84, and I've heard that one is kind of polarizing because, for one thing, it's close to 1,000 pages long, and there's a lot of shape-shifting as far as linear narratives go. I don't know.
Patman, last time on the Wavecast, I heard you talking about this app called Forest, and I was wondering if that kind of helped you turn off drop out of some of the devices.
Yeah, it has. It's definitely worked for when I'm focusing on writing or just work in general. And in the app, you can actually, when you earn coins, for those who don't know, you can plant a tree for a specific amount of time, and then after that, you earn coins. And if you exit the app or if you use any other app, Forest will notify you, hey, your tree is dying. If you go on YouTube and look up, spicy memes, your tree's gonna die, and you won't earn anything for it. And you can use those coins to buy other types of trees, or you can spend the coins and send them to this charity who plants real trees out in the Congo, I think.
Nice.
That's really cool.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of a role-playing game, and I've been using this app called Do It Now RPG, where you set up different tasks that you need to do or habits that you want to do, like make your bed, brush your teeth, take a shower, cook breakfast, cook lunch, cook dinner, all those kind of basic necessities. And when you accomplish them, you get coins, and then the coins you can use to reward yourself based on user-created rewards. So it might be like go to the movies or watch a movie or have some candy or something. Whatever reward the user wants to set up for themselves.
I just use Post-it notes and to-do lists. I'm behind on you guys.
Very stoked.
Yeah, I
guess
don't use
whatever
an
works,
app
right?
either. I hate looking at screens so much. I will
That's
avoid
part of
it
it.
at any opportunity.
Yeah.
And yeah, if your goal is to get away from screens, maybe post-it notes might be a good option.
Yeah. Just going
I'm
back
leaning.
to books that we've been reading, I'm also doing this one, The Gallic Wars by Julius Caesar. It's pretty interesting. It's all about how he conquered all of Gaul, all the different tribes.
What time period was that supposed to take
Um,
place? Like 400 BC or like 200?
I think it's
Much
around 300, 400 AD.
80. Okay.
Yeah. Or is it before? I'm not sure now. You've got me questioning everything.
Because weren't there a couple different Caesars? I mean, throughout history.
Yeah, Gaius Julius Caesar was like the first Caesar, and then his name became like the title for everyone else around him, or everyone else after him. So like Marcus Aurelius and Commodus, they both called both of them Caesar as well. Like his full name was Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Caesar or something. I don't know, Aurelius. I don't know how the names worked back then, but it's pretty wild to read about. And it just goes back to one of my favorite questions to think about in general. Like, Alexander was great, but was he good? So, you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know if I have a direct thought about it, but like, so obviously we're reading the Bible, and I'm so ignorant about all religion, and I'm talking with lots of people about the Bible and all sorts of religions because like there's just so much to it. And I'm talking with one of my friends, and he's, I think you would say he stems from an ethnic background of Muslim.
Okay.
I think that's how I'll describe it. I don't know what he practices today, but I know where he comes from.
His historical
And so,
tradition.
exactly, he's indigenous to Muslim. and so we're talking about, you know, the empire of Christianity and the Crusades and the Jesuit missions. And his argument is that it's still an empire today, and it's still got a lot of control on the world, and that they have done a lot of inappropriate things. And I haven't even gotten there yet. And it's like every time I start talking about the Bible with people, they want to talk to me about Christianity. And it's like, it doesn't seem like anybody around me has any idea that Judaism is like the first 2/3 of the Holy Bible. Like, and then to find out that, you know, Muslim was created post Christianity. And it's like, it's just opening so many windows to possible conversations that it's baffling. Like, clearly humans need religion. That's why we've got so many religions. Clearly humans like gods. That's why we invented so many gods. I know we invented gods because certain groups said that other gods were fake, which means that some of them are made up. And when you look at like the Jesuit missions creating North America, right? Like you're sending over people that aren't, you know, soldiers or aristocrats. They're criminals and poor, and they're coming over with these Jesuits to establish this community, maybe because they love their country, maybe because they love their God. But my education never taught me why we needed religion and why this was the right religion. It was just sort of indoctrinated, and there were religious people, and no one figured out why we got there and whether or not this was the right religion. And what happens is people start fighting wars over these things without knowing why we're fighting a war, or whatever the reason, whether it's religion or a different banner. It seems like people want to go to war and be right and have someone be wrong, instead of actually looking at the world and saying, no, we're all on this planet. We need to unite under one flag. And it's just, I'm trying to tread water.
Yeah, and it's not even the wars for that religion, it's the civil wars between those religions. Like, there's a great quote that I heard in a YouTube video yesterday when I was getting ready for our next Deuteronomy recording, and he said that the decision to pick which books went into the Bible was decided on the battlefield. I'm like, wow. Like
You don't hear about.
they went to war to decide, is this book worth putting in the Bible or not? So that's pretty scary to think about the
That is,
history
yeah.
there.
Hey, Will, I actually have a novel that ties into your conversation that you might want to check out. Let me get it real quick.
Okay.
All right.
It seems like a lot of the wars that the Israelites were fighting were just over like foreskin. Like
Just over
you
what?
know,
Sorry.
foreskins. What will YouTube allow that?
Yeah.
I don't care.
If you were a woman and liberal, you could pretty much get away with murder on YouTube.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
So this
But
is
I
the
never.
book.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, I was going to say that this is the book that I would recommend you read, Will. Silence.
Shushako Endo.
Yeah.
Got it. Print
This
screen.
is, and this
Nice.
was also adapted into a movie that came out by Martin Scorsese. But it's essentially a Jesuit in the 16th century trying to find his master who went missing in.
Does he
during-
climb up a waterfall?
No, he doesn't. He
Oh.
travels a lot of places, but he's a Portuguese priest looking for his master,
Who plays the
While-
Jesuit in
while-
the movie?
Andrew Garfield.
Oh.
Andrew Garfield, as well as Adam Driver. His
I just
companion.
watched a movie about a Jesuit like 2 weeks ago.
That was probably
Could you
him.
hold it up again, Batman? Lower it a little bit to your left. There you go. Okay. Pull it back a little bit. What's it called again?
Silence.
Cool.
It's called
Cool.
Silence.
I'm wondering, can you get rid of the sheet that's on your couch and just do that all again?
I'm sorry for anyone who's just listening to the podcast. These guys are being ass.
Hey, so this is the Wavecast number 11. Do we have any patrons out there?
Not yet.
Oh,
You guys
gosh.
are
No
on
supporters yet.
quite a lot of. You're on a lot of different platforms, right? Like you're on Anchor. You have the website.
Yeah, Anchor feeds to pretty much the rest of them, except for YouTube. I upload separately to YouTube as well. And the blogs
Yeah.
are on the website, www.bookwave.club.
Boom.
But yeah, we do have a supporting donation box for monthly donations, if you're interested in that.
I actually was considering
Oh.
becoming a patron.
Yeah, I know that we're not on Patreon, and I know that they
Right.
hate conservatives.
Yeah. If they went after Sargon, then they might go after us. So, you never know. What was
Like,
that
I
other
just-
one? Isn't
I
it?
think we just have our own, tip jar or whatever.
Yeah, it's attached to Anchor.
So I wanted to go back to the beginning of our conversation in regards to the coronavirus and just kind of losing all faith in, flattening the curve, as well as tying into what's going on here in America with, riots and everything like that. Since we are there's a lot of people who are essentially lost and they don't know what to do. And the coronavirus is pretty much keeping us sheltered and everything like that. So I think the best way to live the fullest is to just essentially do the one thing, which is to find what you're passionate about and build it, innovate it. If that's one thing that you can concentrate on, and you can also apply this to meditation as well, just think about what you want to innovate. The more you practice that every day and develop that mindset, the farther you go with your life. I think that's what's missing right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are stuck doing things they don't really feel passionate about. And if you're doing a job just because, you're making minimum wage and it pays for the food you're eating and all that, but if you're not passionate about it, it's going to feel like you're walking uphill like Sisyphus. You're pushing that rock uphill. You're going to end back down at the bottom. But when you're doing something you're really passionate about, time just kind of disappears. You go into a flow state. And you don't really, there's not that resistance.
Yeah, you just get caught in the habits.
Yeah.
I think, like, there's 7 billion of us, right? And if all of us had a thing we were passionate about and we were all doing it, what would that look like? Like if the droves of masses that are buying their Cheetos and their Mountain Dew and their new movie and they're grabbing their People magazine, if they shut that all down and said, you know what, I have an idea, I'm going to create it, and everybody did that, like, how does that happen? How does that work? Is this system actually able to support people innovating and producing things that are unique to them in every capacity? Like, who's buying it? Who's selling it? Why are we even buying and selling it at that point? Why are we fighting wars over trade routes? Why is it that inflation exists? Like, there's all these weird economic global factors that make me doubt that 7 billion people could ever actually be passionate and aware.
Yeah, and I think you could even rephrase it to, what if all of the world was one religion? They were passionate about that one religion. Let's say it was Christianity and the Bible. Eventually, I think you would have fractions that say, well, we don't want to get circumcised, or we don't want to go to church, and we don't want to adhere to the commandments. And then they would end up disbanding and kind of forming their own group. And I think that's what happens in the world. It's just we have so many different fractions and groups, and some of them are at odds with the passions of the other group, and then you end up with like war.
And it sucks that there isn't something that comes before religion. Like, the notion of countries and continents has separated us so much that it's like, I have a social security number as a Canadian resident. I have a Canadian passport. And if a American wants to come here, he needs to bring his American passport. And if an American wants to go to Paris, he has to go through customs. And then if he loses his passport in a foreign country, it becomes this huge crisis where all of a sudden you stop being a human and you're a foreign entity in a foreign land, and you aren't able to just go through these systems that have been designed for convenience and consumerism in the way that you were a minute ago. And the United Nations says, yeah, we respect you, we recognize your basic human rights, but they don't have the governing bodies, the policing masses, to be able to actually do anything about it. Like, the notion that clean water is a basic human right doesn't hold water. If there's dirty water up north and no roads to it and 1,000 people living there drinking it every day and no one wants to spend the money to get it up there, the basic human right of fresh, clean water doesn't do anything. And I think that we've sort of localized all of our ability into these bubbles all around the world, where we're now flying different flags, and no one in any nation is saying we're all humans and there should be basic systems that apply everywhere in the world. And we have, states like North Korea, where it's like you're just not going there, and it's not an option. They're not human. They are not someone that you get to visit. They are a different world. And it's like, that's absurd. Like, how is it that we got that far? How did everybody say, yeah, let's war over, these stupid things and hold ourselves back this much when we have so much technology? Like, we've created technology that replaces 1,000 humans, and what we have is 1,000 humans using 1,000 machines. And it's just like, we're still in the same laborious, crawling on our belly state that we've been for 1,500 years. It's just prettier and shinier, and we don't even remember where colors come from because we have 1 billion of them in a 3-inch brick in our pocket.
Yeah. I think that's part of like the dirty little secret of religion, is that when any of them talk about people, they mean their own people against the other people. They present an us versus them mentality, which we don't have anymore to the extent that they did, because we're starting to realize that we are just all human. When we say North Koreans aren't humans, they're just, it's not that we're calling them like a subspecies, it's just that they're not joining the rest of us. We have this club of humanity, and they're doing their own thing.
Yeah, like, they deserve to be equal to us. They deserve their basic human rights. But we do not, as a world, as 7 billion soldiers, we do not have the capacity to do anything to help them.
Yeah, and say we have 7 billion problems. Having 7 billion people simultaneously working on those 7 billion problems, I think we'd get them solved a lot quicker.
But it's like, it's so easy to forget what you're supposed to be doing. Like, you can have a conversation with someone and they are in rapport with you. You're making eye contact. Their body language says they respect you and they're interested in what you have to say. They're appreciating your feedback and advice, and they're saying, yeah, I haven't thought about it that way. That really makes sense. And then they go on their phone and 10 years go by.
Yeah,
it's like that one.
Too familiar.
It's like that one story of the prince from Egypt who is sent out west to find a pearl. But instead, he walks into a town, the people give him a drink, and he falls asleep. And he wakes up, and he forgets that he's a prince.
Pat, that's the most wonderful thing you've said all day. That was so lovely.
Just lovely.
It's an old story.
I really liked it.
Really old story, yeah.
Well, this idea... just it, like... Go ahead.
No, you.
Okay, I was just going to say, this idea that people have used religions as kind of a land grab. I mean, I'm sure you guys have discussed it in the book waves about the Bible, of the Israelites basically asking their Abrahamic mountain god to help them with victory.
Yeah, I have some more notes on that topic too for our next recording to close out the Torah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
It's kind of a conundrum because what you were talking about, Will, like religion, I think you said religion is inevitable, or like the first thing that people go to when they're lost. I think there is something before that. I think it's what I would be hesitant to describe as anything other than the ineffable. It can't be described, but then people want to name the ineffable, and they create a god, they create a religion, they put their god on a pedestal above all others, and then that aspect of creating a name for the ineffable eventually leads to naming everything on the earth. Like in Genesis, you'll name all the plants and animals and have dominion over them, and that eventually leads to like taxonomy, classification of nature, science itself. So without that problem of naming everything, I don't think we would have a technological society like we do. It's basically the idea of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil allowed people to name the world and have dominion over it, but it also led to the problems like North Korea. Like, people are named as cogs in a machine or a brick in the wall.
Yeah, that's when we went beyond good and evil. Started naming it for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nietzsche goes into detail about that. I remember that.
Oh yeah.
This-
Yeah. And so it's interesting you bring up naming, because something my father was telling me. He was reading this article. There's this word in the English language. I don't know if you guys have heard this. Lox. Lox.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so what does it mean, Pat? Can you tell me?
I've heard the name, but
Do you know Synapsian?
Isn't lox like cream cheese?
You're close. You are close. And I'm not like, this was a test you were gonna fail. But lox is salmon, and nowadays it traditionally means smoked salmon. And apparently in New York City, lox bagels are a staple. And the word has never changed its spelling or pronunciation significantly in 8,000 years. It has always meant salmon, and it has always sounded like lox. And like, this is an ancient Judeo word. And so I was talking, like, from that, I stemmed off and I turned to my wife and I said, so if you think about the notion of empires and civilizations rising and falling, if I'm a country and I speak language X and you're a country and you speak language Y, and I convert your entire country, now you're all speaking language X. Well, language Y has died. And then you can look at, okay, so if the language dies, there's probably a relationship to the culture that's dying off as well. But if Lox has survived for 8,000 years, that speaks volumes to the culture that created it and perpetuated it, and the reach of that culture across civilizations. And then you just quickly juxtapose it with some of our words that we've created. When was the last time you guys said bootylicious? It was put in the dictionary in 2011.
That was probably the last time I heard anyone else say it, was 2011.
And it's like, so we're in this trend society where things can literally pop up, blow up big, and then burn out, like fidget spinners. Remember those things?
Yeah.
And it's just like, we're grasping at innovation, and we're grasping at production, and we're grasping at consumerism, and it's not getting very far. The only things that are surviving are the ones that are consuming other smaller things. Like, you look at Facebook and Google and Microsoft and Apple. Those guys know how to stay in the business of being in business, but they aren't a human thing anymore, you know? Like, they're this giant corporation, and you know, it's not even a country that's saying, oh yeah, we make Apple, because Apple isn't made in America. It's this thing that's made wherever it's cheapest and quickest, and then it's distributed to as many people as it can. And it's like, so what's the survival rate on a company like that, on a culture like that? Like, iPhone bitches, you know, the cult.
Or the idea of Elon Musk making electric cars.
Yeah.
Although to be honest, he is innovating at a faster rate and has gotten us pretty damn far as a society, as far as business and technology goes.
I nominate Elon Musk as the next deity of the new world religion.
There's this idea.
Let's just write a story. Let's just write a story about how he is actually the offspring of some ancient deity. We'll figure it out.
We don't. It's going to be really easy. His name sounds weird, and his son is an archangel.
Yeah.
Give it 2,000 years to percolate, boys. We've got a religion.
We just need to write a story. That's all we need. A brilliant little fairy tale.
It's like the change of the year. We're right around the year 2000, so it's a good time.
Yeah.
And plus, there are songs made by him. Well, there are songs about him.
My dad asked me a couple weeks ago if anybody was selling Elon Musk bobbleheads yet.
Oh, I'm sure.
Hard to find. You can get them on Etsy, but
Okay.
there's no big corporation making the Elon Musk bobblehead. So there's an
There
innovation for
should
you.
be like, a little pop figurine of him. Little Tesla astronaut jacket. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah,
I'd buy it.
give it a minute. It'll come.
As soon as they see this podcast, they'll be like, why haven't we thought of that?
Yeah.
And those bobbleheads are probably gonna glow in the dark like that one coffee mug they sold.
I hope so.
I was just thinking about how we were talking about religion being inevitable, and the ineffable coming before religion, but what could come after religion as maybe this idea of psychedelic thinking, where you're not necessarily naming the whole world, you're just immersed in it, almost in a flow state, a meditative state. And I had this quote here written down. Wanted to see if you guys could guess what entity I'm talking about. I won't name the book because that would give it away. See if you guys can guess this. So the entity says, I'm old, older than thought in your species, which is itself 50 times older than your history. Though I have been on Earth for ages, I am from the stars. My home is no one planet. For many worlds scattered through the shining disk of the galaxy have conditions which allow me an opportunity for life. What do you guys think that is? Any guesses?
Is this the sun? Is the sun having a conversation with you? Is this a riddle?
Is
It's
it death?
actually mushrooms.
Okay.
It's from the book, Terrence McKenna's book, How to Grow Magic Mushroom. And the reason I brought it up is I think there is something there in the psychedelic realm, and there's different plants that are keys to get through that, but a different way of thinking beyond religion. I don't know, I just like the idea of psychedelic thinkers and finding the others out there.
Yeah. We brought this up when we were talking about the burning bush, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
How
maybe we can talk more about it as we. So, what we're gonna do Deuteronomy in like a formal book wave.
Yeah.
I may have to jump out because my phone
Okay.
is saying it's out of electrons.
Okay. We got a decent sized podcast here. A little bit over an hour.
Yeah.
It's good to catch up with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should make this a
Welcome
little bit
back.
more of a regular thing here.
Yeah, I was really glad to be able to jump in on this one and see that you guys are doing really awesome stuff. Really proud of y'all. The website looks
Thanks, man.
excellent.
Oh, thanks. Will did all the work.
I didn't do all the work. I've done some work, but there's much work to be done.
All the work that has been done, Will is responsible. There.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
one
hoping
of the.
after
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Will.
I'm hoping after the Deuteronomy podcast to just kind of post the Torah series as a post,
Yes.
and then try and stay consistent after that.
Yeah. We got them all on YouTube as a playlist, so you can
And
check
like
that
the
out.
website, it posts the most recent podcast on the homepage too, right?
Correct.
Bookwave.club.
Yep. Well,
Well,
till next time, may the force be with you.
Later.
Or equal to mass times acceleration.